I never liked taking buses generally. But when you're part of the marching band at a Division I school, you spend a lot of time on those buses traveling to away games. My freshman year at State was supposed to be different. I'd been drum major at my high school, led a decent program, thought I knew what I was getting into. The university band was another level entirely. 200 members, intricate formations, traditions that went back decades. I was just another trumpet player in the back rows, trying to prove myself. The dorms was something else. My roommate was this kid from Ohio who practiced tuba at 6 in the morning every day. He had this ritual where he'd polish his instrument for exactly 15 minutes before bed. I thought it was weird until I realized I was doing the same thing with my trumpet. We all had these little obsessions that kept us sane. Band camp started 3 weeks before classes. 14-hour days in August heat, learning drill formations on a practice field that felt like walking on concrete. The seniors moved through those first weeks like they owned the place. They had inside jokes, shared looks, a way of communicating that didn't involve words. I wanted that belonging more than I'd ever wanted anything. The hierarchy was something you learned quickly. Section leaders, squad leaders, drum majors. Each level had its own privileges, its own responsibilities, its own secrets. The drum majors were untouchable. They walked differently across campus, carried themselves like they owned the place. A guy named Williams was the head drum major that year, a senior who'd earned his position through 3 years of climbing the ranks. Everyone wanted to be him or be noticed by him. Williams had this habit of showing up at your practice room door when you least expected it. You'd be struggling with a difficult passage, getting frustrated, ready to quit for the day. Then you'd hear that soft knock, and there he'd be, leaning against the doorframe with his arms crossed. He never offered advice directly. Just listened for a while, nodded, maybe demonstrated the technique once, then left. It was more effective than any lesson I'd ever taken. The practice rooms were in the basement of the music building. Tiny spaces with soundproof walls. I spent hours down there every day, working on parts, perfecting my technique, trying to stand out. The building had this echo late at night. You'd hear fragments of other people practicing through the walls and ventilation system. Pieces of melodies mixing together into something that wasn't quite music, but wasn't quite noise either. I remember the first time Williams spoke to me directly. We were loading equipment after practice, and I was struggling with one of the heavier cases. He walked over and helped me lift it onto the truck without saying anything. Then he looked at me and said, "You've got good hands. Keep working." That was it, but it felt like everything. The band had these traditions. Some were official, sanctioned by the university. Others were not. The unofficial ones were what really mattered if you wanted to move up. They called it mentorship, but everyone knew it was hazing. Nothing too serious, they said. Just ways to build character. Test your commitment to the program. Like the time they made all the freshmen sleep in the band room overnight before the first home game. We weren't supposed to leave the building, weren't supposed to contact anyone outside. Just stay there with our sleeping bags and think about what it meant to be part of something. Sounds harmless enough, but when you're 18 and away from home for the first time, being locked in a building with 60 other people gets weird fast. People started telling stories in the dark. Not ghost stories or anything supernatural. Real stories. About their families, their fears, embarrassing things that had happened to them. I told them about my dad leaving when I was 12. About how I started playing trumpet because it was the only thing that made me feel in control of something. About how I practiced until my lips bled because it was my only way to deal with depression. Everyone had their version of that story. Everyone was trying to fill some hole by being part of this group. The seniors would check on us every few hours. Just open the door, count heads, make sure nobody had tried to leave. But around 3 in the morning, they started asking questions. Pulling people aside one by one for what they called interviews. Wanting to know how committed we really were. Whether we understood what we'd signed up for. Whether we were willing to do whatever it took. I waited my turn for 2 hours, listening to other people get called away and come back all silent. They're told not tell us about any of the question being asked. When they finally said my name, my mouth was so dry I could barely answer. They took me to a practice room upstairs and had me sit in the middle while 5 seniors formed a circle around me. The questions started simple. Why did you choose this school? What does the band mean to you? What are you willing to sacrifice? Then they got more specific. They wanted to know about my family situation, my financial aid status, whether I had anywhere else to go if this didn't work out. They were mapping my vulnerabilities, figuring out exactly how much pressure they could apply. It felt like therapy and interrogation at the same time. The whole thing lasted maybe 40 minutes, but when I walked back to the band room, everyone could tell something had changed. I was part of something now, still at the bottom, but inside the circle instead of looking in from the outside. Winter practice was different. No games to prepare for, no public performances. Just hours of individual work, section rehearsals, planning for the next season. The practice schedule was lighter, but the social pressure intensified. This was when they really evaluated who was committed and who was just along for the ride. They started having parties at this house off campus. Nothing official, just gatherings where certain people got invited. The house belonged to an alum who'd graduated 5 years earlier, but still hung around the program. He had money from somewhere, kept the place stocked with alcohol, never asked questions about what happened there. The parties had this weird structure to them. Not like normal college parties where everyone just showed up and got drunk. These were organized, planned. There were activities, competitions, tests of loyalty that got progressively more uncomfortable as the night went on. Like the time they made everyone write down their biggest secret on a piece of paper, then mix them all up and read them aloud. People had to guess whose secret was whose. Get it wrong and you had to drink. Get it right and the person who wrote it had to drink. But really everyone was drinking anyway. And by the end of the night people were confessing things they'd never told anyone. Or the night they brought out this old wooden paddle that had signatures all over it. Alumni signatures going back 20 years. They said it was part of the program's history, that everyone who really mattered had signed it. But first you had to earn the right. They lined up everyone who wanted to add their name, and made us take turns getting hit with it. 3 hits each, and you couldn't flinch or make noise or you had to start over. I still remember the sound it made. This dull thwack that seemed to echo longer than it should have. The sting was immediate, but the bruising came later. Purple marks that lasted for weeks, hidden under clothes, constant reminders of what you'd agreed to. But here's the thing, it worked. The hazing, the tests, the gradual escalation of demands. It created bonds between people that felt deeper than normal friendships. When you've been through something difficult together, when you've proven your loyalty in ways that cost you something, you become connected in ways that are hard to explain to outsiders. I wanted that drum major spot more than anything I'd ever wanted in my life. By my sophomore year, I was section leader. By junior year, I was being groomed for the position. Williams had graduated, and the new seniors took notice of me. They started including me in things. Late night meetings in the band room. Extra rehearsals that weren't on any official schedule. Tests of loyalty that got progressively more uncomfortable. The meetings happened after everyone else had gone home. Just the inner circle, maybe 8 or 10 people, sitting in the dark band room talking about the future of the program. Who was ready for more responsibility, who couldn't be trusted, who needed to be pushed harder. They talked about me like I wasn't there, evaluating my strengths and weaknesses, deciding what kind of pressure to apply next. Sometimes they'd give me tasks. Small things at first. Organize the music library. Clean the practice rooms. Pick up dry cleaning for the director. But gradually the requests got more personal. They wanted to know who was talking about them behind their backs. Who was complaining about the hazing. Who might cause problems if things got more intense. I became their eyes and ears in the younger ranks. Reporting back on conversations, moods, loyalties. It felt like I was helping maintain order, keeping the program strong. But really I was just helping them identify who to target next. The weird part was how normal it all felt at the time. You'd do something that crossed a line, feel sick about it for a day or two, then it just became part of your routine. Like the human psyche has this amazing ability to normalize anything if it happens gradually enough. There was this freshman that year, David something, who played clarinet. Quiet kid, good player, but he asked too many questions. Wanted to know why certain traditions existed, whether the hazing was really necessary, if there were other ways to build unity in the group. The kind of questions that threatened the whole system. They asked me to keep an eye on him, see if he was organizing resistance, talking to parents or administrators, planning to cause trouble. So I started hanging around him more, offering help with his parts, inviting him to study sessions, becoming someone he trusted. He told me he was thinking about quitting, said the whole culture felt toxic to him, that he'd joined the band to make music, not to get pushed around by people who graduated years ago but still acted like they owned the place. He was right, of course, but admitting that would have meant admitting I'd wasted 2 years of my life chasing something that wasn't worth having. So I reported back to the seniors, told them exactly what he'd said, when he'd said it, who else might be listening. They thanked me for the information and said they'd handle it from there. David stopped coming to practice 2 weeks later, just disappeared one day without explanation. I heard later that he'd transferred schools, but nobody ever said why. I never asked because I already knew. Senior year came. Auditions were held. I got the position. The announcement was made at the end of spring semester, right before everyone went home for the summer. I'd prepared for months, practiced my conducting for hours every day, memorized every piece in the repertoire. When they called my name, it felt like everything I'd worked for was finally paying off. But getting the position was just the beginning. Over the summer, the previous drum majors started contacting me. Phone calls, text messages, emails with attachments I wasn't supposed to share with anyone. They were bringing me into the real inner circle, teaching me about traditions that didn't appear in any handbook. There were financial accounts that alumni maintained off the books. Money for travel, equipment, parties, things the university couldn't officially fund. There were contact lists of important people, boosters and donors who expected special treatment. There were disciplinary procedures that happened parallel to anything the school might do officially. And there were the initiation rites. Not just for new members, but for new leaders. Ways to prove you understood the responsibility you were taking on, that you could be trusted with the program's secrets, that you wouldn't fold under pressure. They told me about the ride. The tradition for new drum majors was something that happened on the bus trip back from the last away game of the season. The seniors who'd been drum majors before would conduct what they called an initiation ceremony. It was supposed to be an honor, a passing of the torch from one generation to the next. Every drum major in the program's history had gone through it. Williams had done it. The guy before him had done it. Going back 25 years, everyone who'd earned the position had proven themselves worthy during the ride. It was what separated the real leaders from the people who just wanted the title. They sent me photos from previous years. Groups of alumni standing around newly initiated drum majors. Everyone smiling, arms around each other's shoulders. The new drum majors all looked tired but proud, like they'd accomplished something significant. Like they'd earned their place in a brotherhood that stretched back decades. I should have asked more questions about what the ride actually involved. But you don't ask questions when you're trying to fit in. You just nod and act like you already know what everyone's talking about. The fall season went well. We won competitions, got good press, had strong attendance at games. I was settling into the leadership role, learning how to motivate people, how to maintain discipline, how to represent the program to the outside world. It felt natural in a way I hadn't expected. But underneath the success, there was this constant awareness that everything was building toward November, toward the last away game, and what would happen on the bus ride back. The other seniors would make references to it, little comments that reminded me what was coming. They'd ask if I was ready, if I understood what I was getting into, if I had any doubts about my commitment. The game that November was against our biggest rival, 3 hours away. We'd been preparing for weeks, perfecting our halftime show, making sure every detail was right. The competition between the two bands went back generations, and there was extra pressure to perform. We left early in the morning on 2 charter buses. The band, the equipment, some parents and boosters who'd paid for seats. Normal pre-game energy, people excited but focused, going over their parts one more time. I spent most of the ride up front with the other student leaders, reviewing our performance plan, making sure everyone knew their responsibilities. The game went perfectly. We executed our show without any major mistakes, outsmarted the other band's formations, got the crowd on their feet during the fight song. After the performance, People were celebrating like we'd won something bigger than just a halftime show. Alumni who'd made the trip were buying drinks, taking pictures, talking about how this was one of the best performances they'd seen in years. I should have been happy. This was exactly what I'd worked for, what I'd sacrificed for. Leading a successful performance at our biggest game of the year. But I couldn't stop thinking about what was waiting for me on the bus ride home. We performed well, won the halftime show, celebrated like usual. The bus ride started normal enough. People sleeping, some quiet conversation, a few card games in the back rows. I was sitting near the front with the other student leaders, trying to act like I belonged there. About 30 minutes into the drive, I noticed some of the alumni passengers moving around more than usual. People who'd graduated years ago, but still traveled with the band to important games. They were switching seats, having quiet conversations, organizing something. I'd seen this kind of coordination before at the parties, the meetings, the unofficial gatherings where real business got done. An hour into the drive back, things changed. The seniors started moving around the bus in a way that felt organized, deliberate. They were collecting phones, telling people to put in headphones, drawing the curtains on the windows, creating privacy for what was about to happen. They told me to move to the back of the bus. The back section had been cleared out earlier. Equipment cases moved to storage, seats rearranged to create more open space. There were 6 of them waiting for me. All former drum majors who'd stayed involved with the program as alumni or graduate assistants. People I'd known for years, who'd mentored me, who'd guided my development as a leader. They formed a circle around the last few rows, blocking the view from the front. The bus driver couldn't see what was happening back there, even if he'd wanted to. The engine noise was loud enough to cover most sounds. We were in a bubble of privacy moving down the highway at 70 miles per hour. It started with verbal stuff. Questions about my commitment to the program. Whether I really understood the responsibility I was taking on. Whether I was willing to do whatever it took to maintain the band's reputation and traditions. I said yes to everything, because that's what you do. They asked about specific situations. How I would handle a member who wasn't meeting standards. What I would do if someone threatened to expose the program's unofficial practices. Whether I could be trusted to maintain discipline, even when it meant hurting people I cared about. The questions got more specific, more personal, designed to test my willingness to put the program above everything else. Then they told me to stand up. The first part was psychological. They took turns breaking me down, pointing out my weaknesses, questioning my worthiness for the position. They brought up mistakes I'd made, times I'd shown doubt or hesitation, moments when I'd chosen personal comfort over program loyalty. It was like therapy in reverse, designed to strip away confidence instead of building it up. One of them mentioned David, the clarinet player who transferred. Asked if I remembered what information I'd provided about him, whether I felt good about my role in his departure. They wanted me to acknowledge that I'd chosen loyalty to them over friendship, that I was capable of making that choice again when necessary. Another one talked about my family situation, my father leaving, my mother struggling financially, how much I needed the scholarship money and program connections to have any chance at a decent future. They weren't threatening me exactly, but they were reminding me how much I had to lose if I didn't prove worthy of their trust. The whole process took maybe 40 minutes, breaking down every aspect of my character, my history, my motivations. Making sure I understood that becoming a real drum major meant accepting responsibility for things I might not want to do, making choices I might not feel good about, maintaining traditions even when they caused harm. By the time they finished talking, I felt hollow, like everything I thought I knew about myself had been examined and found wanting. But that was the point. They needed to empty me out before they could fill me back up with their version of leadership. What happened next lasted maybe 20 minutes, but it felt like hours. They took turns hitting me. Not punches exactly, more like heavy slaps and shoves. They said it was to test my resolve, to see if I could take pressure without breaking. Each hit was accompanied by a question or a command. They wanted to see me stay calm, stay focused, prove I could handle adversity. The first few hits weren't that bad. Open-handed slaps to the chest and shoulders, pushes that made me stumble but didn't knock me down. They were testing my reaction, seeing if I would fight back or break down or try to leave. I stayed still, took what they gave me, tried to show that I could handle whatever they thought was necessary. But the problem was that each person hit a little harder than the last one, like they were trying to one-up each other, show who was more committed to the tradition. The whole thing had this escalating energy that nobody seemed to be controlling. They started talking while they hit me, telling stories about their own initiations, what they'd endured to earn their positions, how much worse it had been in the old days, when the program was run by people who really understood what sacrifice meant. They were nostalgic about their own suffering, proud of what they'd survived, determined to make sure I went through something comparable. I started to feel dizzy around the 15-minute mark. My vision got blurry. I told them I needed to sit down, but they said that would mean I was giving up, that I wasn't worthy of the position. So I stayed standing. The hits were getting harder, more frequent. What had started as ceremonial strikes became something more aggressive. I could see in their faces that they were getting carried away, feeding off each other's energy, losing track of the original purpose. But I couldn't stop it without admitting defeat, without giving up everything I'd worked for. When the first real punch came, I went down hard, hit my head on the metal armrest of one of the seats. The impact was sharp and immediate, sent flashes of light across my vision. That should have been the end of it, but something had shifted in the group dynamic. They were feeding off each other's energy, caught up in something that had gone beyond whatever they'd originally planned. They picked me up and made me stand again. The next few minutes are fragmented in my memory. More hits, the sound of my own breathing getting irregular, the feeling of warm liquid running down my face that I realized was blood. The bus engine rumbling underneath, everything like a soundtrack to what was happening. Someone was asking me questions, but I couldn't focus enough to understand what they wanted. Someone else was telling me to stay strong, that this was almost over, that I was doing well. But their voices sounded distant and distorted, like they were speaking from the other end of a tunnel. I remember thinking this was just part of it. This was the price you paid for the position you wanted. Everyone who'd come before me had gone through the same thing. It would be over soon, and then I'd be part of the inner circle, trusted with the real traditions, accepted in a way I'd never been before. But it didn't stop. The punches were coming from multiple directions now. Someone would hit me in the chest, someone else in the back, someone else in the shoulder. I couldn't predict where the next one was coming from, couldn't brace myself properly. My body was starting to shut down, going into some kind of protective mode where the pain became distant and abstract. Someone hit me in the stomach hard enough to double me over. While I was bent forward, someone else hit me in the back. I went down again, this time staying down longer. My head was pounding, and I could taste blood in my mouth. They were shouting at me to get up, but I couldn't. My body wasn't responding the way it should. I felt disconnected from everything, like I was watching what was happening to someone else. The voices around me became a blur of angry sound, demanding something I could no longer provide. I tried to stand up twice and fell both times. The bus was swaying slightly as it took curves on the highway, and I couldn't maintain my balance. Everything felt unstable, like the floor was moving beneath me in ways that didn't match the motion of the vehicle. The last thing I remember clearly was one of them kicking me in the ribs while I was curled up on the floor of the bus. The pain was sharp and immediate, cut through the fog that had been settling over my consciousness. I heard someone say this wasn't working, that they needed to stop. Someone else said I wasn't trying hard enough, that previous drum majors had taken worse and kept going. Then everything went dark. I woke up in a hospital room 3 days later. Severe concussion, broken ribs, internal bleeding. The doctors said I was lucky to be alive. The university said it was a tragic accident during what they called spirited team bonding activities. The story they told was that I'd fallen in the bus bathroom and hit my head. Everyone backed up this version of events. The alumni, the current students, even people who hadn't been anywhere near the back of the bus. They all had the same story about me losing my balance, hitting the door frame, falling awkwardly in the small space. My parents drove down from home as soon as they got the call. I hadn't seen them in months, and they looked older than I remembered. My mother cried a lot those first few days, asking questions I couldn't answer because I didn't remember most of what had happened. The university offered to pay all my medical bills and maintain my scholarship if I agreed not to pursue legal action. My mom wanted to fight, wanted to make sure someone was held responsible, but I just wanted it to be over. I signed whatever papers they put in front of me and tried not to think about what it all meant. I never became drum major. Never marched again, actually. Finished my degree at the school.